The dining room glittered like a jewelry box. Crystal chimed. Silver went warm from hands. Lemon zest lifted off the tart I had made from scratch and drifted over the rosemary steam of the turkey. Patricia placed a manicured hand on a young blonde woman's shoulder and announced, bright as a trumpet, "Everyone, this is Emma. She appreciates James's potential." I slid the cranberry sauce across the linen, looked at my husband, and with my other hand, tapped the recorder hidden at my wrist. The tiny light blinked alive beneath a lace cuff I had chosen on purpose. Then I pressed play, and Patricia's own voice from 3 weeks earlier poured into the room. "We will fix James's marriage problem," she had said. "A proper wife, a judge's daughter, fertile." The room stopped breathing. The chandelier threw white knives of light. Someone's fork met porcelain and rang a small guilty bell. That is not where this story begins. To understand why the house seemed to shift to my side and why the air smelled of lemon and endings, we have to go back to the quiet weeks when I learned to listen instead of react. 3 months earlier, mornings in my studio smelled like turpentine and citrus cleaner, like possibility and freshly cut wood. The east windows laid a slow gold hush over canvas and concrete. Outside, the street woke up in pieces. The garbage truck sighed. A dog's tag tapped a ceramic bowl. The barista 3 doors down pulled the first shots of the day, and the scent of coffee drifted under my door like a promise. I mixed paint the way some people pray, brush against palette. Pigment turned to weather, weather turned to light. I am Meredith. I paint storms and quiets. I prefer facts to drama, brush strokes, bank statements, timestamps. James used to stand in my doorway with a mug of coffee and a lacy smile. Lately he floated through like steam. Present, untouchable, gone. His phone lived face down. His Tuesdays ran long. The Ritz-Carlton in Westchester posted room service menus that looked smudged by his fingerprints. The first proof of anything came disguised as ordinary. A receipt, soft from pocket heat, left on the kitchen counter under the mail. Ritz-Carlton. Tuesday. 3:17 p.m. spa charge. Another envelope, the corporate card statement, same date, same line item, a different file number. My throat went dry, not with grief but with clarity, like standing outside just before summer rain starts and feeling the pressure change. I did not explode. I did not accuse. I bought a tiny recorder shaped like a thumb drive and read the state statute about one-party consent with my coffee. I tucked the recorder in a velvet bag and slid it behind Patricia's heron figurine when we went to Sunday dinner at her house. You could smell her perfume 5 seconds before you saw her, those white florals that sour in warm rooms. The heron's porcelain beak pointed at the sofa like judgment. The recorder saw what it needed to see and swallowed what it needed to swallow. That night, at our table under the quiet kitchen light, the little device told me what I had suspected and what I had not wanted to know. "We will fix James's marriage problem," Patricia's voice floated out, airy with champagne. James mumbled something about not using the word problem. She ignored him. "She plays with paint, darling. You deserve a wife who builds a legacy. I have someone in mind. Her father is a federal judge, very well connected, very fertile." The word fertile landed with the dull thud of a door locked from the outside. I did not cry. I printed. I saved. I labeled in black pen, "Sunday, living room, Heron." Then I called Helen, my attorney, who laughs like a match strike and writes paragraphs that cut clean. She reviewed the prenup James had insisted on years ago. Ironclad, he had called it. It left premarital property separate. The house was mine, inherited from my grandmother before the wedding. The investments I had built from gallery sales were mine. We would be partners, he had said back then. What the paper said was, "You will be fine without me." Keep documenting, Helen said, and stop apologizing in your own head. So I made lemon curd at midnight, because my hands needed a task that turns chaos into silk. Whisk, sugar, zest, butter. The kitchen smelled bright and sure. Autumn folded into early winter. The air outside sharpened like apple skin. The house breathed heat through old vents with a soft iron smell. I learned the floorboard that moaned under the dining chair Patricia favored. I learned the way her perfume arrived 5 seconds before she did and lingered 10 minutes after she left. James and I spoke like co-workers trying to schedule a meeting neither of us wanted to attend. On a Thursday afternoon, Robert stopped me on the front steps. He smelled faintly of wool and pipe tobacco, the way a safe office does. He looked over my shoulder as if the house might hear him and take sides. "Patricia is planning," he said. "You know how she gets. I am sorry." "For what exactly?" I asked. "For all of it," he said, and pressed an envelope into my palm. "Open it when you are alone." Inside were photocopies of corporate card statements. Tuesday after Tuesday. The Ritz. Flowers. Room 814. Recurring. A neat note in Robert's careful hand. Not for clients. When I looked up, he had already slipped into the car. The taillights blinked an apology and vanished down our street. Patricia's text arrived the way lightning does in July. Showy. Inevitably. Christmas dinner at ours. Family only. Wear something festive. 5 minutes later, a second text. Bring your famous lemon tart. I took a screenshot and sent it to Helen. Game on, I wrote. If you are ready, she replied, and record everything. Calm wins. I baked in silence on Christmas Eve. The kitchen ran warm and busy. The kettle rattled like an impatient guest. The oven fan hummed like a cat. The scent of sugar and lemon filled the house and lifted everything a half-inch off the floor. I prepped a spare recorder and an extra battery. One went in my clutch. The other slid into the cuff of a cardigan, the mic peeking like a small pearl against my wrist. James watched football and scrolled. When an ad said, "Family makes everything brighter," he barked a laugh that did not sound like him. Patricia's dining room glittered. Chandeliers threw fat, heavy light over Waterford crystal. The table was set with heirloom silver that had been polished so hard you could see your future in it if you wanted one they approved of. The turkey breathed rosemary. The gravy murmured in a silver boat. The candied yams glowed with a color you do not find in nature. "Everyone," Patricia sang, placing her hand on a young woman's bare shoulder. "This is Emma, corporate lawyer. Understands James?" Emma's dress was a too familiar red. Patricia had bought me one just like it years ago, back when I was still being measured for a dynasty I had not asked to join. Emma's smile was precise, as if someone had rehearsed it with her and given her marks to hit on the floor. "Which firm?" I asked, easing cranberry sauce toward her. The spoon gleamed with candle flame. "Henderson and Associates," she said. "Family law. Divorce attorney." I set my water glass down with a soft chime. Patricia's jaw flexed. "Emma appreciates ambition. Some women just play with paints." "Some of us do," I said, and let myself smile. I lifted my wrist to adjust a bracelet I was not wearing. The recorder warmed against my skin as it woke. I set my phone face up by the centerpiece. One touch. The living room's past came into the dining room's present like a guest who had not been invited and could not be sent home. "We will fix James's marriage problem," Patricia's voice said again, this time in high definition and under her own chandelier. Someone's fork rang porcelain. The radiator ticked its slow metronome. The lemon in the tart did what lemon always does in a warm room. It grew brighter. "Turn that off," Patricia hissed. "In a minute," I said, after a toast. I could have detonated everything then. I could have walked out and let the room burn behind me. Instead, I put my hand flat on the linen and took pity, the way a surgeon does just before the first incision. "Emma," I said, "do you like lemon tart?" She nodded. You could hear the tiny sound her necklace clasp made against bone as she swallowed. "Good," I said. "I brought 2. I lifted the silver lid from the second platter. Not pastry, paper, the prenup, the deed, bank statements, emails from years ago in which James insisted on paying rent to me for this very house, the one my grandmother left me long before vows were spoken. Emma's eyes flicked the page, flicked James, flicked me, and settled. There is a moment when a smart person recalculates. You can see it land beneath the eyes like a new map. "Money talk at dinner is vulgar," Patricia said sharply. "Introducing your son's replacement at Christmas," I said, "is not exactly good manners either." Robert cleared his throat. The sound was quiet and somehow filled the room. "James," he said, "why is the company card at the Ritz every Tuesday?" "For client meetings," James said. The lie hung in the air, underdressed and shivering. "Name a client," I said. "Just one." Silence has a smell. It smells like cooling gravy, like blown-out candles, like the metal tang of a storm about to break. Emma pushed back her chair. The legs scraped the Persian carpet with a whisper that sounded like someone leaving a church mid-sermon. "Mrs. Morrison," she said to Patricia, polite even in retreat, "you misrepresented quite a bit." "Sit down," Patricia snapped. "No," Emma said softly, and without looking at me, she left her place setting untouched and went for her coat. That is when the front bell rang. Fate wears a winter coat in Westchester and stands in the doorway tracking cold air onto polished floors. "Mr. Morrison," a woman said. She was damp with snow, steady with purpose. "I am Dana Cho. I am here with a subpoena regarding misuse of corporate funds." Cold air slid over the warm room. The night pressed its dark face to the window. The lemon and the rosemary, the sugar and the silver, waited like witnesses. We were exactly where I had planned for us to be. You want to know what came next. The hushed conversation in the paneled library that smelled like old paper and furniture polish. The way voices change when people realize a story they wrote for themselves is no longer the one everyone else will read. The way an ironclad prenup sings when you play it in the right key. First, a detour. That night did not happen by accident. It was built plank by plank. In early December, I asked a gallery owner I admire if my spring show could become something larger. She walked into my studio in a camel coat that still carried the cold and stood in front of a canvas I had been avoiding. The Storm series, the Lighthouse series. The canvases that smell of salt and rainwater, even though they were born in a room with east windows and a space heater. "Do you have more in you?" she asked. "I have this entire winter in me," I said. "Good," she said. "Let them see you." Then I texted an old neighbor, Dana, who now investigates financial crimes. We met in a narrow cafe where the air tasted like cinnamon and espresso and the hum of other people's plans. I slid copies of the Tuesdays across the table. She slid her card back. "If there is more," she said, "send it to this address." Not my work email. There was more. There were emails I had backed up because I learned long ago that artists and mothers-in-law share one belief. If it is not in writing, it is not real. There were timestamps from garage doors and routers. There were photos sent to me by women who did not like Patricia and liked justice just fine. Back to the library. Wood paneling. A lamp that threw a warm cone of light on the desk and made everyone's faces look older or kinder, depending on how they were constructed. Dinah set the subpoena down and looked at me over it as if to ask, "Will you be brave if they are not?" I nodded. It felt like breathing. Patricia spoke first, because she always does. "This is an ambush," she said, "in our home. On Christmas." "In your home," I repeated. "Exactly." James stared at his hands. When he finally lifted his head, his eyes were red at the edges, like someone had rubbed them with a rough towel. "Meredith," he said, "we can fix this." "What do you want to fix?" I asked. "The receipts? The lies? Or your mother's habit of calling me a problem?" He took a breath. "The board will not understand." "That is between you and your father," I said. "What is between you and me is simple. We married. I kept my home. You wanted a fence around your pride, so you insisted on rent. You kept your mother between us like a shield and thought I would not notice." Robert stood by the window with his hands in his pockets like a man about to make a choice. The street lights outside threw long rectangles of snow-colored light onto the library rug. He looked at Dana, then at James, then at Patricia. "Enough," he said. "Sit down." Patricia sat, not gracefully, not quietly. She sat like someone who has just realized the chair is no longer hers. "James," Robert said, "you are suspended from the company, effective immediately pending an internal review. Dana, we will comply with your request. Meredith, I am sorry." He meant it. You could hear it in the way his voice softened on my name, as if it was the first honest thing said in that room in years. What came next arrived in clean beats across the following weeks. The board met in a conference room that smelled like dry coffee and carpet cleaner and polite fear. Dana presented a timeline so tidy it could have been cut with a bone folder. Room 814. Flowers charged to the company card. Spa appointments that lined up with calendar entries labeled Client Golf. The controller, a man who had spent a decade setting aside his ethics one small inch at a time, resigned and left a neat confession in Robert's inbox like a napkin folded into a crane. Patricia had leaned on him too. It turned out she did not just manage family. She managed ledgers. James came home the night after the board meeting, smelling like rain and stale soot. He stood in our kitchen and touched the edge of the island with his fingertips, like a swimmer finding a wall in the dark. "I did not sleep with her to hurt you," he said. "I believe you did not wake up in the morning planning to," I said, "but you did." "Emma," he said, and stopped. "Emma did not do anything to me," I said. "She walked into a room with bad information and left with better. Do not put this on her." He ran a hand through his hair and looked younger than I have ever seen him look. "My mother will never forgive you." "Your mother never forgave me for existing," I said. "This will not change her mind." The next day, Emma asked to meet for coffee. I chose a different cafe, one without cinnamon, one that smells like roasted beans and a clean mop. She came in wearing a charcoal coat and that red dress under it, because clothes cost money and it was a weekday and she had work to go to later. "I am sorry," she said. "I am sorry I let myself be used as theater." "Patricia does not cast small roles," I said. "If it had not been you, it would have been someone else." She slid a printout across the table, an email from Patricia's private address, the one she thought no one knew. It offered Emma a consulting retainer and promised introductions. It also suggested language for a petition that would make me look hysterical in court. "Do with it what you like," Emma said. "I already resigned the retainer I had not even accepted." "Thank you," I said. "You do not owe me anything." "I owe myself better," she said. "And if I'm being honest, I needed to see a woman at a table like that not flinch." "Then let us both keep not flinching," I said. In January, Helen filed. The courthouse smelled like wet wool, old paper, and the electric air of people whose lives are being rearranged by strangers. We had a prenup. It did what it was supposed to do. I kept my house and the investments I had built from shows beneath lights that hum. He kept his personal property and the car he loves more than anything he has finished. There was no alimony. There were legal fees assigned in a way that said, plainly, you can make different choices next time. Patricia, to the surprise of exactly no one, attempted a social campaign. Painting is a hobby, she told anyone who would listen. Meredith trapped him. Meredith refused to give him children. 2 weeks later, her public face cracked when it turned out the grandchild she had been showing off in summer photos belonged to a cousin she does not speak to anymore. People who build their lives on stories cannot keep their stories straight when the facts arrive in a folder with tabs. Robert sent a single text. I am sorry. It is not enough. It is also all I have, I replied. Thank you. It is enough for now. In March, the gallery opened the show. The room smelled like fresh paint and new frames. The Storm series hung on the long wall. The Lighthouse series faced them, light on water, water under light. People moved slowly, as if a floor could change under their feet if they stepped too hard. The city wrote kind things. A collector cried in front of a canvas where a small house stands on a cliff under a sky that looks like the inside of a bruise. Robert bought that one quietly, the way he buys ties, and hung it in his office where Patricia could not throw opinions at it like plates. Summer came. The house felt larger. I could hear my own footsteps and not hear myself apologizing for them. The lemon tree in a terracotta pot on the back steps set its first fruit, and the leaves smelled like the inside of a fresh thought. Patricia mailed me a note in a thick envelope with my name, written in the looping hand of a person who learned penmanship from a nun. It said that family is forever, and that I had humiliated them. It asked me to return the champagne bucket her mother had given her on her wedding day. I wrapped it in tissue and sent it back with a thank you note that said, without saying it, that some heirlooms are harder to ship. In September, because houses like closure, I sold the place in Westchester to a couple who cried in the kitchen and said the light made them feel like their mornings would start right. I bought a 1.5-story craftsman in a neighborhood with old trees. I painted the front door color called marigold because it made me happy to say the word out loud. I rolled my canvases in brown paper and tied them with cotton tape. The studio windows face north now. The light is steady and true. The floorboards know my weight and sing when I walk. On a cold blue day in late November, Robert came by with a cardboard box and an apology he wanted to make without audience. I found something in Patricia's desk, he said, setting the box on my work table. It smelled like cedar and mothballs, and the kind of secrets that dry out under the right lamp. A ledger of sorts, names, gift cards, tips to employees. It will be handled. He looked around the studio like a person who has just walked into a church no one else knows about. He stopped at a canvas turned to the wall. May I? He asked. I nodded. He turned it. Lighthouse. Late light. The kind of horizon that makes you feel as if your chest just opened a locked window. He nodded once, a small bow to the work and to the person who made it. Patricia believes that power is the only currency. I do not agree. I do not know if that helps. It does, I said, because it is true. He left with his cardboard box and the quiet step of a man who has learned to move without rattling a house that rattles on its own. Last Christmas, for the first time in years, I cooked for only the people I chose. The kitchen steamed with rosemary and garlic. The lemon tart came out of the oven the color of late afternoon. The house smelled like butter and sugar and pine. Friends filled plates and arguments about movies. Music threaded the rooms. When the wind pushed against the windows, the panes hummed in their frames, and the sound made me think of a sail clearing its throat before catching. At 8 in the evening, when the plates were stacked and the dishwasher hummed a domestic hymn, My phone buzzed. A number I did not recognize. I do not always answer the door when fate knocks. Sometimes I let it leave the package on the stoop. The voicemail was James. He sounded older around the edges. He said he was sorry he had let other people narrate his life for him. He said he was trying to figure out how to write sentences of his own. He said he hoped the show had gone well. I deleted the message without anger and put the phone face down on the counter. I stood at the sink and watched the cold press itself into the garden and thought about the first line of this story. On Christmas night, my mother-in-law brought my replacement. So I served dessert and the evidence. It is true. It is not the only true thing. Here is another. There are houses that belong to you on paper and houses that belong to you in practice. The first is a deed. The second is a daily choice. The night the chandelier threw knives of light and the radiator ticked time and the lemon tart brightened the air like a flare, the house chose me. Or maybe I finally chose it. You want the last details. You want the scene after the subpoena, after the library, after the neat signatures on neat lines. You want to know whether Patricia ever said the word sorry, and if Emma found a life that did not require her to be cast as property. You want to know whether James learned to choose the truth over the story that kept him small. I will give you what I can. Patricia does not say sorry. She rearranges the room and calls the new layout Grace. Emma took a job in a firm that pays for its own dinners and does not require performances in dining rooms. Occasionally, she sends me a photo from a museum and writes the word, look. James is learning to tell the truth without flinching. He has not mastered it, neither have I. We practice. Practice smells like coffee and paper and the wet coats of people who came in from the snow to stop pretending. The night ends like this. The guests have gone. The dishwasher breathes. The house is very quiet and very awake. I cut one last narrow slice of lemon tart and take it to the porch even though the air will bite me. The marigold door looks like a lit square in the dark. My breath ghosts the air. Somewhere down the block, a wind chime tries a note, then another, then finds the one it wants to keep. I think about the girl in the red dress who made a choice in a room where people expected her to follow orders. I think about the man by the window with his hands in his pockets and the spine he remembered he had. I think about the first time I set a recorder down in a house that did not yet trust me, and the last time I needed to. The thing about betrayal is that it teaches you two lessons. The first is about the person who betrayed you. The second is about yourself. I thought I was someone who could endure. It turns out I am someone who can decide. So I decided. I decided to bake instead of beg, to press play instead of raise my voice, to invite the truth to Christmas dinner and let it sit where everyone could see it, to hang a painting of a lighthouse where the light keeps flashing whether or not anyone looks, to paint another one and another until the room smells like salt and readiness. A year from now, someone will ask how it ended. I will tell them endings are for stories that stop. Mine did not. It changed shape. It learned the sound of its own footsteps on new floors. It learned to open doors without asking permission. It learned that lemon under the right light smells like mercy. Stay as long as you like. The kettle is on, the tart is cooling, the house is listening, and somewhere down the block, the wind chime has finally found its note.